like the practical sort of element of, yes, it's great being a musician, but I still need to eat. Welcome to the Girly Organist podcast, where we discuss insider perspectives and practical processes behind church music, academia, and the creative arts. I'm Dr. Rebecca Rock-Potty. I am a lecturer at Liverpool Hope University and director of music in an Anglican church at Lancaster Priory. Today's episode is about doing an MA as a musician and the benefits. Now, there are lots of videos on YouTube and the internet and podcasts about the benefits and the disadvantages of doing a master's qualification. However, as somebody that has done a master's and had a great experience, I wanted to share that. So, rewinding to undergraduate, I had pursued music performance. I was a pianist. I went to conservatoire to do my degree, and that was tootling along just fine. And then I was getting to the end of that course of study and thought, this is great, but I have to be able to, eat. You'll find most things come back to, like the practical sort of element of, yes, it's great being a musician, but I still need to eat. And so in that process, I started to look at what I wanted to do next. I didn't go into university thinking I was going to do any postgraduate studies. That wasn't something that I even knew about. It was just, I get a degree and see what happens. And what's the thing you're good at? Playing the piano. Do a degree in playing the piano then. And it was quite a pragmatic approach. So when I had been studying at conservatoire, I then thought, I'm going to finish my degree off for the last year, because it was four-year degrees at conservatoire. I'm going to go and do the last year at a university and do music production instead. And I did this because I thought, the world's changing and it's okay being able to play really well, but if I can play and record myself, and it just opens up more options. That's what I felt it would open up more options for me career-wise. And sure enough, it has. And I thank past Rebecca for the present location of present Rebecca, because she really had her back. So I moved over to do music production, having not done it before, and I had a whale of a time, if I'm being honest. It absolutely was not what I expected, but I was quite useful, so everyone wanted to work with me because I could actually play, in time, in tune, all that kind of thing. But it also meant that all of those same people that wanted to record me were then quite happy to spend time showing me how to do stuff, because they knew how to do that and I didn't. So it worked out really well. And it was in university that I thought, it wasn't my thought actually, it was one of my lecturers, and he was sort of saying, you could do postgraduate study. I was like, yeah, not me. Far too practical. I'm not smart enough to do that. And he's like, no, we'll consider it. And I was like, oh, fine. Because I'd been considering doing a PGCE, which is the teaching certificate here in the UK. And I was really reluctantly thinking about that, because I thought, teaching. And I was like, I don't want to really go, I don't want to go into teaching, but that's what you do if you do music, and my parents weren't particularly pushing me that direction. I just I was like, oh, what do you do if you're a girl in music? You go and do teaching. So that was kind of where I was up to. And like, that's a really valuable thing for people to do. It wasn't the thing that I did. It wasn't the thing that I would do now. And I'm really glad that I didn't do that, because it wouldn't have been for me. I haven't got the personality for it, I don't think. And so I thought, right, well, I'll carry on with this music production lark and do music production at master's level. Well, it was just like the best thing, because it was installations, it was research, it was recording, sampling. I really like sampling. Spending time in the studio, like taking impulse responses for different buildings and spaces. And a lot of the work that I am doing now developed out of my postgraduate study. And I think that is one of the benefits, like one of the first benefits, is that I didn't have a great plan about what I wanted to do at 21 years old. And so I did the thing that I thought, like, my approach was always to, what are the things I'm good at? How can I pull those together? And so I was just constantly like going through processes, being like, what can I pull together in a way that's going to work for me? What skills do I have? How can I pull them together? And I look at what I do now, and I still find myself frequently asking this question of like, what are my skills? What am I good at? What can I pull together in a different way? And that is kind of what I spend most of my time doing, actually, as a researcher, as a business person, as an academic, as a director of music. Like, in all these spheres, I'm just like, okay, what are my skills? What can I pull together? What am I lacking in? And how can I kind of hone that area, etc. So one of the benefits that the master's program gave me, it was 2 years because I did it part-time. It gave me the chance to work that through in a supported way. Now, I didn't know that was what I was going to get from my master's. I thought, oh, I'm just going to get, another certificate. And I was like, I have enough certificates at that point, but I went on to do many more. So clearly I didn't really believe that I had enough. So I was like, but the thing that it gave me was like a supportive environment of people that weren't in performance, people that weren't in, they were academics, but they weren't in like performance so much at that time. And they were more music production side, but they like everything was about like creatively solve the problem. And even this sort of last 2 months, I've been involved in a few projects, and like I find the skills that I really kind of became confident in at my master's coming in useful. And I was like, no, like sometimes there isn't a solution to things, but actually most of the time with a little bit of creative thinking, we can work something out. And so it really gave me like a problem solving, well, I already had problem solving because I was doing that before, but it kind of like that is a skill, problem solving as a skill in my like arsenal of things that I'm good at. That became like more of a key area to have confidence in, that there wasn't really anything that you can't do. We just learn to justify it, and actually the more creative you can be, most people aren't creative. And I suppose that's where like the question of creativity really came up for me, because being a performer, I never felt creative really when I was in conservatoire, because it was always like, well, I'm just playing someone else's music and like trying to give the best interpretation. So I thought I'm a great interpreter, but not a great, like not creative. And it wasn't until I transitioned into music production that I was like, oh yeah, I am creative. I've just not had that language or word or seen it in that way, or been encouraged at all at any point to be creative in this way. So it was like a light bulb moment that happened as part of my master's. What it did, the second really good thing doing a master's, it gave me like an understanding and insight into academia. So I did my master's at the same place that I did my PhD, and they were fantastic as an institution at building a postgraduate community. So you could see people that were like behind you, you could see people that were ahead of you, and it was a really well integrated like community, like postgraduate community. And I say that because not everywhere has that community, and sometimes I come across students, like they're in church music in particular, and they're like really struggling, and sometimes I think they're struggling because they haven't got that, this is where you're going, this is normal, like there's no kind of measure, and sometimes they just feel really isolated. So I think like at a master's level, choosing somewhere that has a really close community can be like, can make or break it really, and completely change your perspective on it. I think we do that really well at Liverpool Hope. I was just going to say, we're some of the best in the country for like student experience, and that's building that sense of community. But I went to the University of Central Lancashire, and they are not sponsoring this, but like I don't have anything negative to say about my experience. Wasn't always easy, but I don't actually have anything negative to say about my time there, and I was there for 5 years of postgraduate study and 1 year of undergraduate study. So yeah, community, building community, being involved in community, showing up to stuff in your postgraduate studies, really important. The third thing that doing a master's, like the third beneficial thing of doing a master's, it let me change direction. So, I'd gone through like conservatoire thinking I'm going to do a PGCE and become a high school music teacher. And like, that's a great job for some people. It was never going to be the job for me. I just not got the personality for it. And because I'm probably too creative and ever so slightly maverick, and just like to kind of be like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Everybody else does that. I'm going to do this instead. And that's just me. And like, but what it did was kind of allow me to hone that as a skill. Because one of the things that often people will do is they'll like be in a track and they won't really like that track, but they don't know how to step out of it or how to change direction and pivot, or like how to cope with that. And I've always kind of been able to, I've always had that ability. And what it really did was made me think, okay, if, like if you're reading a book, for example, and you're going, this book is not for me, don't keep reading till the end. So it's like, set a goal, aim towards it. But then if you're like, actually on the journey to that goal, if something changes, it's okay to pivot slightly and like change the end goal, because you now have more of an understanding that it was. So aiming for like a PGCE, actually, like I didn't do that. I did a PhD instead, but aiming for that, like I wouldn't have got to that if I hadn't been aiming for something. So I'd just say, like, aim for something, even if you think it's not necessarily what you want to do, because it will definitely lead to something that you would like to do, but could never have imagined at that point. You might not even know that that role exists. So it gave me the confidence and ability to pivot in a cohesive way, as opposed to like, oh, I'm doing music. No, I want to do, now I want to do, I don't know, medicine or something. It wasn't that kind of pivot. It was like, okay, I'm in the creative arts. I'm happy about that. Don't want to be a high school music teacher, but I want to do creative projects. Okay, let's draw the skills. What do I need? What do I need to like gen up on, etc. So that was the third thing. I'd say the fourth benefit for me was then being able to develop a niche. And on the one hand, the things that I'm saying are like, oh, that's not a niche, Rebecca. That's not a niche, girl. And I'm like, but it is developing a niche, because one of the things in creative arts that is really hard to do is to sell yourself. And what the masters at UCLan did in particular because not all masters do this, was basically teach you how to be like innovative. And that sounds crazy because universities are supposed to do that, but not all of them do. And I think that like going to do a master's in a place where the staff are going, they'll just throw you a curveball and be like, but what about this? Like being in a group and community of students that are sat and like ready to go, oh, I'd not thought of that, but, and then being able to kind of answer the but or like work through those scenarios is a really valuable thing to do. And I wouldn't, for example, be in church music, specifically in the job at the Priory that I'm in now, if I hadn't have developed that ability in my master's level, because if I'm late to church music, comparatively late to church music, in the English choral tradition, and like some of the reasons that I'm in the job that I'm in now at a relatively young age, like a comparatively young age nationally, is because I have all of these other skills that are required for the future of church music. So the Priory is like, as an institution, looking forward to where do we want to be in 20 years. And so in their hiring, they've essentially taken on somebody that is looking to where is church music going to be in 20 years, rather than just more of the same. And it's, again, a lot of how do I pull all these skills together to take us there, or to prepare the ground for us to kind of move it forward. So this sort of pivot and pull method, I suppose is what it is, a pivot and pull method, is something that I like consciously developed at my master's level. And I think that was great. Personal development, number 5. Okay, personal development. I mean, I know it's a huge area and it's on trend, etc. at the moment. But personal development is not a trend, and it can look like lots of different things for lots of different people. So, there's nothing wrong with getting up at 5 a.m. if that's your thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean, you might just end up exhausted and burnt out. So like you have to, I think, take these things in moderation and things that are going to move you in the direction that you want to go in, and not just kind of a random direction. But on a personal development front, it gave me the ability to network. And I wasn't really aware of that at the time, because sometimes it can be really depleting meeting new people. And I meet a lot of new people, and it's lovely to meet new people, but like I go home and it's really exhausting to me, and I find it really hard sometimes just to like recover the energy from that exhaustion. And one of the things that it taught me to do, and I'd already started to do this a little bit because of the work that I'd been doing. So I was meeting a lot of people in my work, but not in my studies per se. And it really showed me like how to introduce myself, how I wanted to present myself, and to lean into it. Because sometimes it's like, oh, this is terrifying. How do I present myself? But actually, just do it. Hello, I'm Rebecca Rockpotty. Are you a hello person? Are you a good morning person? Are you an afternoon person? Like, how are you presenting yourself to people? And I'd say that like most recently, since going on social media, most of my photographs you'll see are me smiling, because as you can see if you watch any videos, I'm usually smiling. I'm quite a smiley, happy person. And so I really like, I don't dislike the artist's mystique. I just find it hard to take it seriously in some occasions. On many instances actually. So I'm like, well, if people meet me, I'm going to be smiling. So why are my pictures not smiling? And then some people will say, well, because it's not professional. And I'm like, no, but I'm presenting myself as an approachable, conversational person. Let's have a conversation. There's a conversation to be had with Rebecca. And I want to, like, I'm inviting that by smiling in my photographs. So it really kind of, doing the masters on a personal development level, indirectly gave me like great examples in the staff of how to do that. And it wasn't like, in some places academics are really detached from the students, but at UCLan the academics were not that detached from the students, which meant that if you were going to, you know, a particular networking event or whatever, they would be there too. And so you'd be watching them actually like networking with other people and how they do it. And it was very much like, see the example. And I think that that was a really valuable thing that I hadn't had before. Certainly not at conservatoire. At conservatoire, it's very like cold by comparison. And, you know, keep the mystique. And I was just like, that's not in line with my personality or values particularly. So I don't want to do that. And I don't, if you haven't noticed. And the last area is the academic area, writing skills. And I know that that sounds crazy, but like, we take it for granted how good writing skills, how valuable good writing skills can be. And again, I feel like as a master's student at UCLan, the writing skills, like it was all workshops and that, but the expectation of what writing would look like and just the sheer amount that was required. And it wasn't necessarily all required for assessments, but it was required as like every week for presentations and things like that. And you were always having to present to peers, and you were always having to write things up and write scripts for this and scripts for that. And, you know, it just really sort of, it gave me a joy of writing, which I didn't have before. Like, I'm not really a journaler. I journal for very specific things as part of like the practice-based research process. But I don't like journal feelings, particularly like personally. But it gave me a love of actually writing and sitting and writing and like how that process works. And it wasn't sort of something that was forced. It was, no, you know, we had this thing called Speakeasy, and everyone would bring something that they'd written that week and present it. And just like having that community that traditionally would only be in like creative writing or, you know, authors areas, like they managed to integrate that into all of the masters programs. So like I was doing a master's in music production, music practice, I don't remember what the title is, but it was mainly like music production, installation art in particular. And then there was like someone doing one in space science, and then people doing like social work and health and dental, and like we were all mixed up. And it was like, you need to learn how to write, because if you learn how to write, you can be a great citizen, you can advocate for yourself, you can advocate for other people. You need to learn how to write. And I just feel like they went that step further and were like, okay, show us your writing. It wasn't just like, you need to do this. It was like, okay, the follow through at every point was there. And I think that that is something that's really valuable. And it's valuable to me, not just because obviously like now I like writing, I still like writing and I'm quite happy to write, and it encouraged me to go on to more study and become an academic. But like that message, the messaging of follow through so that you can advocate. So it was messaging of, you know, the skill of being able to be dependable and follow things through where possible, is like a valuable life lesson. And it's a valuable life lesson, but we're going to show you examples of people that are doing that in Europe, like all the time. And so that was also a really like fantastic kind of space to be able to develop those sorts of skills. And so I would say overall, my master's was an excellent stepping stone. Like it was definitely a turning point. Going into music production was a huge turning point. And it does make me laugh now, because sometimes, you know, I still do recording. Like, I've done 2 albums and I'm working on the 3rd album at the moment, and people will sort of be like, oh, you know, like people that don't know that that's my background always make some like really weird comment about like, oh, you're trying to be a techie or something like that. I'm not like, and I always sit there, I'm like, I'm not trying to be, I am, like, I'm just like, I've studied this. I have a lot of like equipment for recording and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's always, yeah, many surprises. But I think using a master's as an opportunity to pivot is a really valuable thing to do. I think it's okay to not entirely know what your area is when you go into it, but I'd say on the whole, a master's is going to lead you into further academia. So have that in your mind, that that's the purpose of it, but also like the self-study element, some people struggle with that. And if that is something you struggle with, find the network of postgraduate students if it's not like really well developed already. And if it's not really well developed already, set one up. Like, the master's is the time where you have to start doing things for yourself. And that shouldn't need saying, but I feel like nowadays in particular it does. Like, don't wait for other people to do things. Just go and do it, because, you know, like you could look like the decisions that you make now are going to impact you in 10 years. So make decisions that you're happy with, so that in 10 years you're where you want to be. Because like the decisions that I made when I was doing my master's have massively impacted where I am now, and I'm very aware of that. Like decisions when I was young impacting where I am now. So just like take on those responsibilities, like capture them and own them as your own, for good or for bad. Like, there's lots of mistakes to be made along the way. Of course, that's going to happen. It's just part of being human. And it's normal, but just sort of, yeah, use like a master's is a really good way to be able to pivot. Or if you're like, what are my skills? You know, sort of grabbing and pulling skills together and doing a real audit of your personality, your values, your lifestyle wants. Sounds crazy, but like people kind of make decisions, but they don't think, what do I want as my lifestyle? You know, do you want to have a car and a house, or do you want to live more nomadic, or like, you know, just like realistically, what sort of life are you planning on leading? And use the master's as, yes, an academic, you know, prestige, I've got a master's and all of that sort of stuff, but like use it as an opportunity to pivot slightly. Or if you're like, actually, I've been doing this and I'm on this track, I'm not entirely convinced it's for me, like use it as that time to audit and pull together these other things that you want to take forward to the next stage of your life, career. Maybe you've not got a career at that point, but you're starting your fledgling career. It's just kind of just starting. So yeah, seize the day.